Cassie? Okay, every setup is a little different. Okay, so, when first volunteered to do this talk, I thought, oh, easy peasy. Top 10 things you can do to get your garden ready in the spring. And then I started thinking about it, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is not gonna work. So, you have to shift on the fly here. So then I thought, well, in the spring, you spring clean your house. You've been in the house all winter, and you're tired, and your garden, you just wanna get out in the garden. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about how to spring clean your garden and get it ready to go for the summer. So the first thing I do is I get a little notepad and I walk around, sort of a plan, so to speak. And I write down what I want to do in each little area. I've got 8 raised beds, and I got a lot of garden and landscape and a lot of fir trees. So fir trees have a lot of branches on the ground, and I never remember to rake my leaves in the fall, so I've got a lot of leaves I need to do something with. So, but I'll tell you why leaving the leaves is good in just a few minutes. So just like I said, just some general cleanup. The tool maintenance, and that I might move to the second talk on putting your garden to bed in the fall. Depends on how much time I have here. So I'm gonna move that to kind of to the bottom of the list here. We're gonna talk a little bit about checking your soil. Now, I know we've had a lot of soil talks, and soil is really, soil to me is really pivotal to a good, healthy garden. So we'll spend some time on that. Talk a little bit about prepping the beds for planting. And then, again, irrigation is important. And then you can check your garden plan. So we'll talk a little bit about each of those. But first of all, spring clean. Get those weeds out of there. Rake any leaves or compost that were left on the yard or in your flower beds. And you can either compost those leaves, you can mow over them and mulch them and leave them in place, or you can rake them up and put them on landscape areas or in your garden beds. Not a problem. And if you do it like when around 50 degrees outside. You need to prune back and trim all the branches that have broken or got damaged in the heavy snow that we had the other day, or just wind damage throughout the winter. Basically anything you didn't do in the fall, because you got tired of gardening I get tired of gardening in the fall. So, and again, you can put those in the compost, you can use them in your beds to kind of finish the winter out, or you can do cut and drop cover crops. And Amelia's gonna talk a lot about that, so I'm not gonna go there, I promise. And look at all the containers that you have that you've left out all winter. Check them. Are they damaged? Are they cracked? Are they broken? So, and again, this is a time for renewal, so clean them out if you need to clean them out if they're not perennials. And what I do for my container gardens is I have an old claw tool, and I just kind of move it around and toss a handful of compost on it, some slow release fertilizer. Sounds good. Rake it in, water it in, seed it, we're good to go. Gardening could be real intense, or it could be kind of lackadaisical. Things will grow or they won't grow. That's my plan. They grow or they don't grow. It's kind of like Darwin's natural selection in my yard. It really is, because some things grow really well. Some things don't. So it's kind of a hit or miss. This is the slide I'm going to put at the back. But I want to get to the soil, because all living creatures need what? They need water, they need food, and they need shelter. Well, plants also need oxygen. And, so we're gonna break those three things down, and we're gonna start with checking the soil. Oh, my box. Sorry.
Now, there's a variety of ways to do that.
I'm back, sorry about that. One is you can contact the Thurston County Conservation District and type in soil test. And they will give you directions on how to prepare soil test, and, you have to pay for that. And they'll send you back a report that has a whole lot of information in it. But really, the key is, the micronutrients are good, but the top three key nutrients you need is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. NPK. So you can do an official soil test, or you can do like a soil test that you can get at the garden store, hardware store, et cetera, et cetera. And these are pretty good. They do NPK and pH. It's like chemistry. Awesome. Chemistry is always fun. Take a soil sample, and you can do a sample for each of your beds. You can do a whole garden sample. Just take, pieces of dirt from different places in your whole garden. You mix it with water. You let the soil settle. You take the water. You decant it, you put it in a little tube or a tray. This one here has little capsules of chemical reagent you put in there. And then you would wait for so long, and then let's see here. Then you test the color. Okay, here we go. Here, see, you test the color, and the color will tell you if you're low on nitrogen or high on nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus. And it also does pH. Now, pH is important. A lot of your garden vegetables like a pH of about 5.5 to 7, 7.5. So more in the neutral range, right up here. So the lower the number, the more acidic the soil. The higher the number, more alkaline. So if you want to take an alkaline soil and make it more acidic, you need to add an acid. And vice versa. So if you have a really acidic soil like a 3, you want to make it more alkaline. You want to bump that number up to be a more neutral number. You can also get a probe. Yes.
Where do you buy that? I mean, can you get that at like Tractor Supply?
I don't know about Tractor Supply, but I know you can get them at garden stores, hardware stores, things like that. The question was, where do you get a sample kit like this, or a soil sample? Those places. My husband's really good, because he got me a tester for Christmas. It does light, moisture, and pH, which is fantastic. And it's very similar to this one right here. These are just some examples of soil test kits. This one here is what you would do for Thurston County Conservation District. Take the soil, mix it up, and send it to them, and then they send you all the paperwork what you need, in the form and everything. The one on the top is what you would use for your own yard. And then this one here, you can just take this and put it in different beds or trees. I have some huge citrus trees that I have in my greenhouse, and my husband was out there. He gets bored in the wintertime, so he does the gardening in the greenhouse. And he noticed that the citrus trees were, even though we've given them a lot of nitrogen, they still weren't looking too perky. And they weren't flowering, which is what he was looking for, was the flowers so he could have some fruit. And so the pH was about 8, 9, on the scale. And citrus like acidic soils,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
So he found out that putting just some diluted vinegar in the water to water the trees would help lower that and make it more acidic. So he actually got the citrus trees down to about 5%. They're happy. They're starting to turn green again. Yes.
That probe that you had, does that measure pH?
This one here does, this one here does pH, yes.
And what do you call that probe?
Oh, this is just a hydro farm meter.
So if I was gonna go look on Amazon, I would type in hydrofarm meter to try to find that?
You know, for this one here, I just
Yeah.
typed in soil probe.
Soil probe, oh, okay.
Bingo. Yeah.
And what does that run?
Oh, they vary depending on if it's just moisture or sunlight, or if it's all three. And to be honest, I don't know.
Okay,
They're pretty reasonable. The kits run about the same price. And then the soil sample, can run anywhere from $20 up to $65, depending on what type of report you want. Okay. So knowing what you need for your soil is really important. NPK, when you go and buy fertilizer, no matter what kind of fertilizer, organic or inorganic, you're gonna see that on everything. And if it's not on the front of the package, look for the ingredients, because it's always gonna be on your ingredients. All fertilizers have to have that NPK, proportion on the package. Okay, and the reason why for NPK is because that is what the soil, that's what plants just thrive. They need that. Just like you need coffee in the morning. Plants need that NPK to survive. So, how do you get that into the soil? Well, soil amendments. Compost tea, green manure, cover crops, mycorrhizae fungi, and legume inoculants. So who knows what compost tea is? Yeah. All right, that's great. That's where you have compost and you put it in a container and you put water in it, and then it's gonna filter through, and what comes out the bottom is usually kind of brownish, inky color, but it's really rich in nutrients. And it's a great way to give your plants a shock of good water and good nutrients. Compost, of course, you have your kitchen compost, that's always fun to have. One thing I forgot to put on here is worm casings, red worm casings. They're really good because they're really expensive at the store, but they're really good. But you can also raise your own worms, so that's always fun to do with kids, actually, and your kitchen scraps. I worked in an office one time, and I worked with a group that did recycling and, just the whole recycling concept and, yeah. So I was talking to this woman and she reached under her desk and dumped some of her lunch salad in this bin. And I put the lid back on and shoved it back in, and I thought, what in the world is she doing? Come to find out, she was raising red wiggler worms in an office. And then every so often she'd just take that bin home and bring a new bin in. And she started off with shredded paper and then her kitchen scraps for lunch, and then, everybody in the office was contributing, so she had a really healthy population of red wiggler worms. But she also had a great selection of worm casings. Green manure, again, I'm gonna let Amelia talk about the cover crops and how beneficial those are. Mycorrhizae fungi. Who knows what that is? No. All right. Well, I did my master's work in mushrooms, so I really like mycorrhizae fungi. A lot of people don't realize that pretty much you'll find, the underground roots of mushrooms everywhere. And, some of them work really well in connection with the tree roots. So you have plant roots, and you got your mycorrhizal fungi, and they live together and they have a really happy relationship because the plants are providing the mycorrhizal fungi with what the fungi needs, and the mycorrhizal fungi is providing the plants with nutrients that they pulled out of the soil and with water. So it's a great relationship there. In fact, I was gonna mention a report that just came out, about there's a group that puts the mycorrhizal fungi in with some native soil, and they are doing some experiments on green groups. But, mostly for us, all we need to do is you can buy a mycorrhizal powder, they powderize it, and just lightly sprinkle that on your garden and work that in. It's really great for trees and shrubs. It works well on your garden also, it really kicks that garden into top speed. Okay, legume inoculants. Some of you might remember years ago, the pea seeds and bean seeds that you bought in the garden store, or garden seed, were a funky color. They were like pink or red. Well, those typically were covered with inoculant. And the inoculant is a bacteria that helps the plant take free nitrogen from the air, either in the air or in the soil air, and bond with the plant to form the nitrogen nodules on legumes. So I use that often. Nowadays, they don't do that before, but you can buy inoculum, and it's called Booster, of all things, for grow more beans and peas. 2 years ago, I didn't use it. Last year I did. It made a big difference. My peas and beans, especially my beans, were a lot more robust. So you can take that as you wish. But one nice thing about adding amendments to your soil is, again, you build texture in your soil and you build water holding capacity. And oh well. It disappeared. The thought just disappeared. Into the ether it goes. All right. So, prepping your garden bed. Talk about soil, now we'll talk about the prepping. And this works whether you have raised beds, containers, or you're growing in the ground. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Our soil here is glacial till. You guys are all aware of that. It's very sandy, but also rocky. That's why adding amendments is so important, because you're adding texture to that soil. You're adding it so it's not gonna just be sandy, but to have place for the roots to grow. And I think that's really important. Now, prepping your garden beds, turning the soil, dealing with soil is really important, because you wanna add airspace into that soil. There's a couple ways to do that. One is called no dig. And I always thought of that as kind of, oh, that's the lazy man way of dealing with soil, your garden beds, because you don't go out there every year and shovel and turn it over, which is a lot of work. No dig is where you basically don't disturb the root bed. What you do is you just dig a little hole for your transplants with a trowel, or you can use what's called a dribble, which is a wood top shape, and you just punch holes through the root mat at the very top. Now, this pattern mimics nature, because out in nature, you see new trees growing through the duff layer under the pine trees, or under a leaf mold, all the leaves that have broken down over years. So that no-dig kind of mimics that pattern. But it's really good because it reduces damage to the soil, and it also increases the water holding capacity, because it opens up the soil and allows for air to get down to those roots. A lot of people don't realize that roots need air to breathe and to bring into the plant. Rototill, I was raised rototilling. My grandparent rototilled, my dad rototilled. We have a huge rototiller, can't use it because it's so big. A couple of years ago, I got myself a little battery operated rototiller. It's great, but I only use it like once a year, and that's mostly just to loosen up some of the hard rocky soil that I have. My dad also double dug. Now, I was raised in Eastern Washington where you've got like 6 to 12 inches of sort of good loose soil. And then after that, you have a caliche layer, calcium layer, that is great for water holding capacity above that, because water doesn't go too much past the leachy area, but it's just a pain. So luckily, we don't have to really worry about that over here. So double digging is really, it's a way to, let me explain what it is. You take your garden bed and you take a shovel down and you put it on the side. And then what's there, you take a spade and you loosen the soil, and you can put your compost there, and then you take your shovel, the shovelful that you took out, and put it back on top. So that's a double dig. The first time it's there, you loosen the soil, that's the second dig, and then you put the soil back on top. That's great for getting mulch and compost down to the root layer. But we don't really need to do that very much over here because you only have to do it like every 3 or 5 years. So it's not really hard to do. But again, sometimes you're more successful just getting rid of the weed layer on the very top and letting them sit, letting that plant material compost. Let's see, what do we have? Oh, water. Oh, what do plants need? Air, water, nutrients. So here's water. And here you're using hand watering with a wand. The Rainbird sprinkler there on a telescopic tripod, that's my favorite, because you can get a whole lot of yards there. If you have in-ground watering, then the bottom two over here are drip systems. Oh, I got 2 of the same picture. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought one of those was the oscillating sprinkler. I love oscillating sprinklers. Because when it's hot outside, what do? You have to cool off. You gotta run through the sprinkler, people. Come on, have some fun. So, but there's a lot of different options for watering. And it really depends on what you would like to do. If you like to, hand water. My dad was a hand waterer. He would go out and hand water his yard. And I know he was retired, he really didn't have anything else to do, but I'm sorry, I like sprinklers. You can get a whole lot of space covered in sprinklers. Plus it cools the air down a little bit. But the important thing is getting the water to the root zone. So hand watering is good. Sprinklers are good for a large space. But to really get water down to the root zone, it's best to do like soaker hoses or a drip line, because that, you put the water where you want the water to go. And then if you have your like down here, if you cover that with mulch, that even helps, that's even better, because then not only do you get the water to the root zone, but you also keep it moist, that root zone moist. When I lived in New Mexico, we had huge gardens and we had them on they were the soaker hose. So it's the black hose that seeps love those, I really do. Because we had those hooked up, they came on for 30 minutes at 3 o'clock in the morning under the mulch layer. So I didn't have a lot of evaporation when I irrigated. We don't really have that problem here, except for a couple of weeks during the summer when it gets really hot outside. For the most part, you know, a drip line, a drip system like this is great. That little bubble on the bottom left, yeah, left. Those are great for, you know, like perennial plants or new trees, if you're putting trees in, or even container gardens. You can set up drip lines for your entire container gardens, your patio gardens. Oh, yeah, so now for some fun. We got a little bit of an introduction on your garden plan. Those plans are really important for crop rotations and also companion planting, you know, write it down. I have a book that I kind of keep notes in, and some things are pretty obvious. Like 2 years ago, one of my garden beds, I had tomatillas in. And of course, you know, at the end of the year, I just kind of took the plants out, left the fruit. And so I have a lot of tomatillas, a lot of volunteers. They're really good. I grow tomatillas really well. I don't grow much of anything else really well, but I do grow tomatillas. And because they're heirlooms, so they're self-pollinate, they just keep growing. They're happy. So knowing what you have in which beds is really important, so you can make sure that you're rotating and adding the legumes every couple of years to the bed and everything. Seed stash, yeah. How many of you have seeds from like 10 years ago? Oh, yeah, you know, do the paper towel test, or just plant them. You know, like I said, it's natural selection in my yard. But go through your seed stash every so often. Some people are very organized. I appreciate you mentioning that you put them in a photo album thing. I have mine in the greenhouse. And you know what happens in greenhouses? Mice. So I had mice, and then some packets got wet. So then I had seeds sprouting everywhere. So now I have them in the house. The mice haven't found them in the house yet, so, but you know, keep track of what you have. Make an idea. What do I want to direct sow? When do I want to direct sow? Again, the back of that label, the back of that seed package is really critical information. So, some great reference material from Wazoo. I just, you know, went to the Wazoo publications and typed in cover crops, or typed in, I don't even know what I typed in. Oh, drip irrigation, you know, and so, and I always start with Wazoo, Washington State University, because, you know, that's what they do here for us. But also Oregon has some really good information too. Sometimes I'll go down there. Because we both have that maritime influence. Okay, so how much time do I have?
That was good.
Okay, then I'll talk about the tools and PPE on my next talk.
Thank you.